Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with the next part of What If Naruto was reunited with his family. Before continuing this, if you haven't, then please do leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And yes, I have taken into consideration of your recommendations and ideas regarding what ifs that I should do in the future. I need some time to make a plot and ships about those, okay? So yeah, I require some time and I request that from you guys. So I hope you, well, give me some time, that's all. And without further ado, let's continue with our story. Naruto whistled as Fu finished off Kabuto in the Chunin exams preliminaries. Fu was good. That much Naruto could clearly tell. Smirking to himself, he hoped he got a chance to fight her in the main tournament, which he swore he would participate in, and test his mettle against her own. I accept no loss, hummed Sasuke, crossing his arm as he deactivated his Sharingan. Kabuto had been a crafty opponent, but Fu outclassed him. It was just that simple. Yep, Naruto agreed, smiling as he raising his hand for a high five as Fu flew back up to her spot next to Naruto. With a smile of her own, Fu smacked her palm against his as she landed, her wings folding in on themselves and vanishing into her body, as if they never existed. Various Kennis around the room eyed her, silently wondering where her wings had gone. You did it, Datebayo, Naruto beamed. Oh, you know, Fu began brushing some imaginary dust from her shoulder. It was nothing. My sheer awesomeness is too much to handle, she boasted. The smile on her face shifted into a smirk. Fu opened her mouth, intent on tooting her own horn a little more, but was quickly whacked on the head from behind. Yelping as her hands flew up to rub her cranium, Fu turned to see Hijiri crossing her arms, a lone eyebrow raising in her direction. Heh, sorry, got a little carried away there, huh? Fu inquired, attempting to palisade her friend. A tad, yes. Hijiri intoned. Fu merely chuckled sheepishly as Naruto snickered a little behind her. As the Kyuubi Jinchuriki laughed, he didn't notice a pair of lavender pool trailed over him. A small, almost imperceptible frown on the lips of Hinata Yuga, as the only thing betraying her mood, or so she thought. Her two index fingers pressed against together repeatedly as she watched Fu and Naruto interact, a warm, almost hot feeling growing in her chest, as so she did. Hinata was not particularly pleased to see the two of them getting along so well. She wanted Naruto to have friends, but the way he and Fu seemed to just click irked her. Though she feared that Sakura and the other Konoichi of the group would one day grow to see how awesome and amazing Naruto was. She admittedly did not think of them as competition at the moment, especially considering they had let her know they helped with Naruto if she asked on more than one occasion. Fu, however, was an unexpected variable, and for the first time Hinata could admit that she was jealous and worried. She didn't want to lose Naruto to Fu, nor she wanted to be on bad terms with the guarantee. Fu had saved her team when she didn't have to, and Hinata had been hoping to be her friend. Heaving a silent sigh, the Hyuga princess decided that she had to do something before anything developed between her crush and Fu. It was time to take Naruto up on his offer. So preoccupied with her thoughts, Hinata didn't realize that the names for the next round had been decided, and she was one of them. Feeling a tap on her shoulders, Hinata snapped back to reality. Kunai smiled down at her before directing her attention to the screen. Hinata's eyes widened at the result. Hyuga Hinata versus Zaku. Hinata's fingers pushed together more rapidly, her nerves making their way through her body from head to toe. She had been too focused on Naruto and Fu. It left the young heiress in a mental state that was unprepared for battle. Not too far away, Neji glanced at her, a look of distant plaster on his face. He considered saying something to her briefly, intent on diminishing her confidence even further. Opening his mouth, he stopped short when he watched Naruto approach her. Hinata, the young Uzumaki said, prompting the Hyuga heiress' heart to start beating even faster than it already was. Turning to him, she started a reply. Yes, you look a lot nervous, he commented. Naruto would say he knew her as well as his teammates or some of the other Genin they graduated with, but the past 3 days he spent with her and allowed him to get to know her just a better, even a little bit. One thing he noticed was how easily she could be flustered. Personally, he found it pretty interesting, but he knew she wouldn't be able to go into her fight like that. Naruto looked down to the floor now, embarrassed that she had noticed. She was bothering and bothered as well. She knew it wasn't anything to get worked up over, but she was already a tad emotional because of her thoughts about Naruto and Fu, so this was only serving to exacerbate the problem. Hey, Naruto said, again gently this time, as he set a hand on her right shoulder. Her head snapped up at him. She hadn't expected any physical contact. Don't sweat the fight, okay? He grinned once more, though this grin wasn't nearly as wide and energetic as his usual one. Hinata swore it seemed almost tender. You're going to do great. You're strong. You think I'm strong? Of course. You made it here, didn't ya? Though, that means something. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a capable Konoichi, Hinata. Hinata looked into the eyes of her crush. His assuring gaze made her cheeks warm further as her confidence multiplied. Naruto is right, she thought with a small smile. I could do this. Thank you, she replied, the smile on her face growing brighter. Now more determined, Hinata made her way down to the stairs past Naruto, who was staring into the space she occupied orderly. After a moment, Sasuke called out to him, snapping him out of his thoughts. You're gonna stand there all day, Dobe? Or are you going to watch Hinata's fight? Yeah, Naruto calls back as he turns and walks the few feet back to his team. Below them, Hinata had just made it down to the arena floor. Standing opposite to her was Zaku. His arm was crossed with a cocky smirk adorning his face, though his tapping foot betrayed his impatience. Hinata observed him for a moment before Hayate asked them if they were ready. Hinata nodded as the veins around her eyes bulged, activating her Byakugan. Across from her, Zaku unfolded his arms and crouched as if ready to pounce. Taking this as confirmation, Hayate backed away as he shouted, "Begin!" "Zaku-ha!" growled Zaku, thrusting his arm forward and releasing a blade of air, sounding towards Hinata. Having seen the build-up of his chakra before he'd even spoken, Hinata was already full prepared to evade his assault, and thus she easily sidestepped his attack before she rushed him. Clicking his tongue, Zaku fired off another attack from his hand, which Hinata easily dodged, dancing around the waves. As the Yuga hairs closed in, she flew through hand signs before holding a hand to her mouth and inhaling, "Suiton, Mizubanshi no Jutsu." Exhaling, Hinata released a small wave of water from her mouth that immediately began to squirm and change forms into a perfect duplicate of the girl. In tandem, the twin Hyuga moved in the vanguard. Hinata met Zaku in a clash of limbs as he brought his leg up to kick her, only to be blocked by a single hand. Gritting his teeth, he rose his arm, prepared to fire his jutsu point blank, only for rear Hinata to strike his right arm and leg rapidly. Losing balance, Zaku began to fall backwards, only for Hinata to deliver vicious double-hand palm strikes to his stomach and back. A decisive end to the fight as Zaku's eyes shut and he dropped to the ground. He didn't even get back up. "Winner, Yuga Hinata," Hayate announced. Hinata took a deep breath as she deactivated her Byakugan. Amidst the cheers of her friends and comrades, she'd been so nervous before the match began, but talking to Naruto had really done wonders. He restored her confidence. From there, she would silently admit that the fight was rather easy. She'd been expecting more from her opponent. With a small yet content smile on her face, Hinata made her way back up the stairs, where she was met with praises from her teammates Kurenai, Fu, and Naruto. "That was great," complimented Fu as she gave the girl a quick but tight hug. Kurenai offered her student a tender smile. She knew Hinata could do it. "Told you to do great." Naruto grinned. Hinata looked at him, a bashful smile on her lips. "It's thanks to you. If you hadn't encouraged me, I wouldn't have been calm enough to fight." "Hey," Naruto replied. "What are friends for?" "Glad I could help, Tebayo." Hinata nodded and began pushing her fingers together as she usually does. Before suddenly stopping, she looked up at Naruto, silence regaining as over them for a few moments before she finally spoke. Also, do you think I could take you up on that offer to treat me to cinnamon buns after the preliminaries?" Naruto blinked once, having not expecting her to suddenly ask that. He didn't remain quiet for long, though, and soon grin was on his face and widened. "Of course." Link break. Tayuya flexed her fingers as she spun her flute around in her right hand. She was alone right now, which was frankly the only reason she didn't have a skull plaster on her face. She was currently in the northern area of Konohagakure, lounging in and out of the way cafes under the guise of a henchi. She hadn't thought it would be this easy to infiltrate Konoha, but she supposed it would have gone so well if Orochimaru had tried to smuggle in the entirety of Zone 5. Tayuya didn't like giving credits to her enemies if she could help it, but here she would begrudgingly admit that Konoha's security was true. She was thankful she hadn't been caught. Orochimaru made it clear that he needed an operative inside the village. The Jonin and Nanbu has been becoming increasingly suspicious of Kabuto. Though the boy tried his best to hide his true nature, little moments here and there during the battle in his previous Chunin exams had slowly been giving him away. Orochimaru had doubted he lost through to the true third round of the preliminaries without being revealed. Thus, Tayuya found herself within the village in order to pose as a spy for the next few weeks. She had been the most sensible choice. Not many people would question a seemingly civilian woman. She could admit that there was no way her other idiot teammates would have pulled this off, but in the end, that didn't mean much to her. It didn't change the fact that she hated this particular mission. Watching all the trash of Konoha go about their lives merely pissed off her. They didn't know true suffering and struggling, and yet they enjoyed luxuries she hadn't even been afforded back when she was her most innocent. The village made her skin crawl. Huffing, Tayuya regained in her emotions and straightening her face, glancing around to make sure no one was staring. Briefly, she locked eyes with a red-haired woman who looked away soon after. But Tayuya paid it no mind. She didn't care if some random civilian glances at her for a second. Having a sigh before taking another sip of her tea to further even out her nerves and soothe her once again slowly growing annoyance, Tayuya hoped Orochimaru meets with Danzo went well and they could start the plan already. She wanted to be on her way back to the base. Link break. In the preliminary round, it continued to progress smoothly following Hinata's match. 4 fights had begun and ended since her victory. Samui and Temari had faced off each other. Though Samui gave it her best, she was ultimately defeated. Temari's noteworthy control of the wind element proved too much for the Kumo Konoichi, as the woman only really had to rely on Rhython techniques in her rapture. She returned to her team with a lesson learned. Variety could be the difference between victory and defeat. Following the two Konoichis was Shino and Hijiri. The match had been quick. Shino attempted to have his Kikachu quickly and stealthily drain Hijiri's of her chakra, but the second one of his bug neared it was shredded. They were quite. Aburame tried one more tactic before forfeiting his match. The woman's wide wind element was too powerful for him to combat of his current level. The one thing to come for further battle would be the loss of more of his heave. The fight was not worth it. Hijiri's victory dealt Konoha their first defeat of the preliminaries, if you didn't count Kabuto, that is. The next bout had been between Ino and Omoe of Kumo. Ino attempted to use her clan's signature jutsu, but Omoe was not one to sit idly by. She could never find a good moment to land her technique as Kumo-nin moved in, and before she knew it, she was staring down to the edge of the blade. She made an attempt to best him in taijutsu, realizing that her clan techniques would do no good against him, but he was simply the superior combatant and defeated her soundly. Neji against Kaori of Kumo came next. The outcome was brutal and fast. Neji crushed her, swiftly leaving her to be rushed to the hospital on a stretcher. Heated glares were what he received from his victory by a number of competitors. The sheer brutality he'd used to defeat the redhead had been completely unnecessary. The match hadn't been about victory, it was personal pain and simple. Naruto in particular was trying to burn a hole through the side of the Neji's head. He heard about what stick was lodged up Neji's ass during the older days as the older boy fights from Hinata. What happened to him was absolutely and without a doubt tragic, but that had nothing to do with Kaori. All Neji was doing by brutalizing her was igniting flames of vengeance in her teammate. What good was that? He was so wrapped up in his thoughts that he almost missed what popped up on the screen. Almost. Uzumaki Naruto versus Tenten. Thoughts of Neji were literally erased from the forefront of Naruto's mind as the young Namikaze began heading towards the stage. Good luck, Naruto. Hinata stuttered. The blonde flickered her thumbs up before he began to pass Fu, who merely nodded along. Was with Hijiri, who smiled. Sakura did the same, and Sasuke merely smirked as he leaned on the railing, not even sparing his glance or revel. Window. Naruto snorted at the remark before grinning devilishly. Counted on, Teme. He and Tenten made it down to the battlefield and Hayate began the fight. Naruto was about to lunge until Tenten spoke. I heard from Gai-sensei that you are a true Uzumaki. Naruto rose a brow at her question but kept on guard as he voicefully remembered who that was. He never met Gai personally, but he had heard of him through his parents. What is it? Then if I am, I want to see how good your swordsmanship is, she replied as she unsealed the katana from her scroll. It's been years since anyone has ever fought a practitioner of Senpou no Mai. Tenten added as she got into her stance, a stance Naruto recognized. We learned from Yugao. Naruto asked as the seal from his katana appeared in the palm of his left hand. His blade rose up, and he drew it before settling into the eye of a storm stance. Tenten nodded and prepared herself. Not a smile. Then this should be fun. Accept your challenge, Tenten. However, if one of us deems the other too strong to take on with swordsmanship alone, we use everything at our disposal. A deal? What good is losing without going all out? Tenten agreed to Naruto's stipulation, and then silence passed over them. As the stare-down began, up in the stand Sasuke narrowed his eyes. He thought that his teammate had told him everything he practiced and during their 2 months of training, but clearly he held back some information. Sasuke wasn't surprised though. He kept some things to himself too. Naruto knows swordsmanship? Sasuke inquired, directing his question to his sensei. The other rookies and genin around him listened in curiously. Considering the cat was already out of the bag, Kakashi figured he may answer the questions. It's not like knowing the basic of Senpou no Mai would save them from it after all. Yes, the Uzumaki clan was very versatile. Aside from being Funjutsu experts, they were also known for their devastating taijutsu and kenjutsu. Their kenjutsu, the Senpou no Mai, is a style of extreme speed. Focusing on multiple strikes, practitioners are seen swinging their blade only once, but truly swinging any number of times. Their speed is just typically so superior to their enemies that one swing is all that can be perceived. And I suppose that's why his stance has very few openings, despite Naruto seemingly just standing there without any sort of guard. He interjected, not truly asking a question. His speed is just so great that he should be capable of defending regardless of the lack of guard. Kakashi nodded at her observation. The initial stance of Senpou no Mai is merely a ploy, a very dangerous one. Kakashi replied before looking back to the battle. Now pay attention, young ones, it's about to begin. The gathered genin focused back on the stare-down below just in time to see Tenten move in. She covered the distance between her and Naruto fairly quickly, attempting to horizontal swipe at his shoulder, only to swipe at the air. Naruto was faster. He dropped into a crouch, his katana already sinking towards Tenten's leg. Reacting swiftly, Tenten jumped above the slash, only to grasp for air as the hilt of Naruto's katana crashed into her abdomen. She felt the seemingly singular blow strike home 3 times. Tenten slid back a few feet and caught her breath as she looked back to the blonde, who was now back on his initial stance. What just happened? He questioned Ino. He slashed at her legs and gave her a blow with a hilt when she dodged. Sasuke commented, Sharingan active. He almost missed the whole exchange. Without his Sharingan, he would be just as confused as Sakura. Isn't that a little dangerous? Ino inquired, concerned. He could have seriously hurted her. And she's from Konoha, just like us. She would have been fine. Hijiri responded, yet elaborated no further. Kakashi was the one to do that. She's right. The Senpou no Mai requires the practitioner to know wind release, and while the element is hailed for its cutting power, it can also work quite well to cushion blows. I imagine Naruto would have only left some nasty bruises if he was the proper control. If, Sasuke repeated with a snort, but that doesn't matter. He added as he narrowed his eyes at Naruto, its blade specifically. The blade he's using is blunted. He's really fast, Tenten complimented. And your movement, you are fast, I give you that, and your movements are also sudden that I couldn't require and react quite fast enough, and you're not faster than a certain teammate of mine. I can take you. She grinned. Naruto smiled and replied to challenge. Good to know, I can pick up the pace then. With those words, Naruto vanished again faster this time. Tenten was unprepared, but reacted quickly once again as she caught him in front of him. Ame thrust forward Naruto's katana shot towards her, and she managed to block it and maneuver out of the way of the seemingly simultaneous thrusts aimed for her limbs, or so she thought. She managed to block and dodge a total 5 thrusts, only to be gazed and struck along her arm and legs by 10 more. Tenten slid back, her body stinging as she gritted her teeth and tightened her grip on the sword. Taking a breath, she performed Oborozuko, which Naruto blocked with relative ease. Tenten was nothing compared to Yugao. Tenten was about to follow up on the attacks before her instinct screamed at her. Acting swiftly, she substituted herself with a scroll. She had her katana sealed in and watched as if it was assaulted by a flurry of slashes from above and below. She heard Naruto click his tongue at her escape. She released back into his style initial stance. Tenten stared him down once more and realized that whether she could keep up with him or not, his swordsmanship alone was simply better than hers. Naruto had more mastery over his style and techniques than she did. I really been hoping for this to be swordsmanship only. I can't win like this though. Tenten trailed off, frowning at the necessity to submit to the fact that he was superior. She didn't plan on losing though. Grabbing 2 scrolls, she kept on her person as Naruto's eyes narrowed in seriousness. Tenten unruffled them as she jumped up and began her technique. Soshoro. With speed and deadly precision, Tenten flung the hundreds of weapons that appeared from the scrolls at Naruto, grinning. Naruto met the assault head-on, dodging what he could and deflected, but he couldn't. Eventually, the blonde set his eyes back on Tenten to look for an opening, only to find that she was gone. Shit, he thought as she came up on his left, her blade thrusting forward, sighing through the air as she full planned to best him in the moment. Naruto quickly met her katana with his own, only for her to let go of her weapon and duck below Naruto's strike. Smirking at job well done, Tenten grabbed another scroll and unsealed its content as she jumped away from Naruto. From out of the scroll flew a large spiked ball. It slammed into Naruto and created a dust cloud that obscured the two combatants from the view of the spectators. Ouch, muttered Fu. Her fellow Jinchuriki was good, and she knew he was terrible. All Jinchurikis were, but she knew that would have hurt. Yosh! It seems Tenten youth had finally overcome that of Naruto's. Grinly, a multiple of the gathered Genins seemed to agree with the observation. Team 7 and the Jonins, however. I think Tenten is in trouble now, Sakura stated. This drew a slew of odd looks from the gathered Genin. Sakura didn't really pay them any mind though. They didn't know, but she knew. They didn't seem what Naruto could do now, but they soon would. Her biggest mistake was choosing to remove their restrictions now that more than just swordplay can be used well. Sasuke trailed off. Smirking, he knew Naruto had this in bag. There was simple too much at his disposal for him to lose to Tenten. Not at her current level, the Uchiha couldn't wait until he could face off the blonde. As the dust cleared, it became apparent to the other Genin that Sasuke and Sakura may have been right. Positioning in the center of the battlefield below was a half dome of chains. Naruto at the center, Tenten's eyes were wide. She couldn't believe he managed to defend against her so quick. She unleashed her attack point blank. Gritting her teeth, Tenten took up a defensive stance, and her katana as the chains began to recede back into Naruto's body. A little skull seemed to have set on Naruto's face, but not in anger, but in focus. He'd almost gotten himself hit by her attack. Naruto had to admit Tenten was pretty strong when she put her mind to it. The Tengu Namikaze decided not to give her another shot at him. Who knows, he might not overcome the next one. Naruto looked his opponent in her eyes and grinned. You're great, Tenten. We'll have to do this again sometime. With those words, Naruto blurred from her view before she found him upon her, his katana tearing through the air from her right. Quickly, she lifted her blade to block, only for Naruto to stop short and something coiled around her left leg. Gasping, she was pulled off her feet and flung into the air left wall as she dropped her katana. 3 more chains escaped from Naruto's body and wrapped themselves around her and other limbs before reeling her in. Naruto let his blade rest against her neck slightly, and with a sigh, Tenten admitted defeat. What? What the hell was that? Spluttered Kiba. Kongo Fusa, the Uzumaki clan's Kekigenkai, Guy replied. Yin release, chains capable of assisting in Fuinjutsu as well as being immune to certain elements, based on their wielder. Apparently, they have other capabilities as well, but that's not information for me to divulge. Down below, Naruto freed Tenten, and they began to head back up the stairs side by side. Guy-sensei told me about your Kekigenkai, but I've been hoping you hadn't unlocked it yet. Hehe, I'm glad I did. Really saved my ass in our fight. You're pretty sneaky, Tenten. Really wasn't expecting the spike ball. Naruto replied with a grin. Tenten offered a small grin of her own, enjoying the praise from her opponent. She may have lost, but she was at least a little happy to know she'd surprised him. Thanks, your swordsmanship is something else too. I wish I had been more of a match. It's all thanks to my... Naruto caught himself before he slipped and said, Mom, that would have been hard to explain right now. My mentor. She's very strong. I bet she could teach you a thing or two, actually. She knows more than just the Senpou no Mai. Really? Began Tenten. Tentatively. Do you think you could ask for me? No prob. Naruto grinned. I'll ask after the preliminaries ends. Smiling, Tenten gave the boy a quick hug. Thanks, Naruto. Nodding in reply, the two of them reached to the top of the stairs where their friends were waiting. Lee tried to comfort his defeated teammate in his own way as Naruto's team congratulated him. Link break. Deep in the forest outside of Konoha, surrounding by tall trees and large rocks, was the most unnoticeable entrance to a cave. Inside, past the dripping ceiling and slippery rocks, was a drop only a shinobi could hope to maneuver. The bottom was impossible to make out, obscured by the darkness of the cave. Should one manage to drop, however, they would find themselves landing on hard wood floor illuminated by a torchlight. Along with the walls, the obscuring darkness above was merely a powerful genjutsu. This was the scenery Orochimaru and Kimimaro were met with. Guiding them was a pale boy with straight black hair and a half shirt. Orochimaru grinned at the rose Danzo used to hide himself. The old man certainly knew how to vanish, it seems. Continuing to follow Danzo's subordinate, Orochimaru and his most loyal follower headed deeper into the winding underground tunnels of the man-made cave system. After further walking a few turns here and there and passing up a multiple of doors, the trio found themselves before a large double door. Sai pushed it open and walked in before he took his position next to Danzo. Kneeling, smirking, Orochimaru walked into the room. "Welcome, Orochimaru," Danzo greeted. "Danzo." Orochimaru replied back, "To think you would fall so low, but I suppose I can help rectify that. If you would just be so kind to divulge some information." Orochimaru wasn't typically one to force his mind games and let his silver tongue rest, but he wanted to cut to the chase. He had a sort of deadline he set for when he needed to be back in the village after all. Orochimaru had left a clone to watch over how the preliminaries developed, but there was no guarantee his cover would remain intact. That in mind, he didn't want to be away for too long. Nodding, Danzo spoke. "You've got a basic understanding of who has returned to Konoha, thanks to the message I had delivered from Sai." "Yes," Orochimaru grimaced. "I've already changed up my invasion plans thanks to the information, but I will be needing more details," the snake asked, "and a new way to get to the full force of my army into the village." He added as an afterthought, "I can help you provide with that. However, I want to make sure we have our accord. I will help you invade Konoha and bring Hiruzen and Minato low. In return, however, I would ask that you do not entirely destroy the village and its forces. If you agree to these terms, once it is over and I am instated as the new Hokage, you will be welcome within Konoha's walls once more. You will have access to our resources essentially. Oto and Konoha will be allied." Orochimaru heard, thinking over it. He wanted Konoha burned to the ground, but he could see the benefits to Danzo's plan. Having the leaf as an ally would grant him for more test subjects to experiment on. Grinning eerily, Orochimaru gave his agreement. "I believe, Danzo, that would be, in fact, for an accord. Konoha no longer had to fear destruction. Now, they had to fear for a coup." As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. As this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out.